Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, blogger of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts between 2 minutes and Orange Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends from Oxford Community Television who is watching us and also on YouTube. We got today is two guests. We got the double trophy here, of course. Orion beat Oxford 36-0 to win the trophy back into Lake Orion. And we also got Dan Stickrat of NorthOaklandSports.com here with us. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sammy.
Yep. So we got a lot of football to talk about here with you. Of course, you also do some work for State Champs, I believe.
Yeah, State Champs and High School Sports Team magazine.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you look at the league this week, of course, we're in the middle point of the year, week 5. We got with recap week 4. Of course, there were some monster upsets occurred. I think there were 2 of them that occurred that really surprised me, and one of them was in the white division. Of course, Farmington beating Adams 19-15, and that it was a crazy, fanatic, wild game. You got to look at what happened there. I mean, like, Kyle Wood scores a touchdown with about a minute and 19 left, and then it gets 2-point conversion. They're up 15-7. No, 15-12, and then gave up a. Then it was a 45-yard kickoff return, which led to a Farmington touchdown, and then Adams still had a chance to win that game.
You know, I think that's not just a loss. That could be a crucial loss for Rochester Adams because you look at their schedule the next 3 weeks, it's a little bit top-heavy, the OAA white. Last year there was a lot of 5 and 4 teams coming out of the OAA and the MAC conference that didn't get in on playoff points.
Right.
And there's a lot of teams that might be in a similar position this year if they don't win out. So yeah, that could be a very crucial loss for Rochester Adams.
When you look at the loss for Adams, I mean, they had a tough loss to Southfield early in the year. But when you look at the schedule that Adams has, you know that they got to play an Oak Park team that's desperate. You know they got to play They still got to play Harrison, and then you got to look at. Do you think right now, with the way Adams is playing, you think they're in some trouble?
They could be. I think Farmington Harrison's starting to play a lot better. You know, it's always Harrington. Anything that John Harrington coaches is going to be at least a quality team. You look back in his tenure, and there's rarely a losing season. Yeah, I think Adams could be in trouble, especially if they lose the Oak Park and fall to 2-3. Their back will definitely be against the wall. That would mean they would have to beat Farmington Harrison and essentially win out. Because again, the 5 and 4 teams, there's only 3, 4, 5 in each division to get in. They're spread out across the state, and there's just when you have that many teams in the 3 divisions of the OA kind of beating up on each other, the additional playoff points aren't kicking in if a lot of schools are 5 and 4 and 6 and 3 and 4 and 5. So therefore, teams like Rochester Adams are going to have to win out, especially if they lose the Oak Park in week 5.
When you look at the strengths of competition, you know what I mean? It's got to come into play, when it comes to a team that's 5 and 4. When you look at Adams' losses to Southfield's 3-1 right now, but the loss to Farmington, of course, their strength of schedule is not great. Farmington's isn't, but do you think Farmington's strength of schedule could hurt Rochester Adams in the long haul?
It's possible. Farmington was one of those teams that people weren't sure how they were going to do. They moved back to the OAA white. They have some good players. They were questioning their depth a little bit, in August when the season started. But maybe Farmington's that sleeper team. Maybe they're better than people thought they were. Maybe they could squeak in a couple more wins that people aren't expecting. Maybe Farmington's a team that will join. Because I think at the end of the day, Farmington Harrison Southfield will get in. It's that next tier of the OAA.
Right, it's that next tier.
Right. Will it be Adams? Will it be Oak Park? Will it be Farmington? Who is in that next group that's going to sneak through? Obviously, North Farmington, Birmingham, Seaholm, and Rochester are all overall struggling this year.
Right.
They're not a factor. Can one of those teams beat the other 5? Probably not, but you never know. Injuries could happen. We could play a Friday in the rain. We don't know. Stranger things have happened over the years. But
right.
I think in the OAA white, you're still looking at a group of 5 teams, but again,
the question is going to be, because one of them is desperate right now, and that's Oak Park, and then, of course, let's shift our gears from the white to the blue. Of course, there was a monster upset, and we got to mention a couple teams here we're going to talk about. Lathrop beating Avondale 28-26. I mean, Lathrop was in control of that game. They were up 28-7. they came back. I mean, like, and then Lathrop to stop Avondale on a field goal attempt to win that game. So when you look at Lathrop, this is an odd team to figure out because they had a nice win early in the year with Detroit University Prep. Then they had they were blown up by Groves, and then they were shocked by Royal Oak, and then of course this win. So what's your thoughts about Jason Solomon's team in his final year at Lathrop?
Yeah, they're kind of an enigma because that's got to be depressing to be in a school that looks like it is going to merge. Is there a pride factor in their sports teams for one last year? I think that I would call that a major upset over Avondale. You know, Avondale has had 7 straight winning seasons coming in the year. Not even the years they've gotten the playoffs. There's been a couple 5-4 teams like last year, but they've consistently been competitive. I think Avondale had a couple injuries, a couple people. Their starting quarterback from last year, Travis James,
He didn't play.
Yeah, he opted strictly to play baseball his senior year, and being a starting quarterback as a sophomore and junior, that hurt a little bit. Avondale has kind of played a little bit under subpar what people had thought based on what they've done in recent years. So yeah, I would consider Lathrop win an upset.
When you look at the implications for Avondale, of course they play Berkeley this week. Of course, that's a big game. They've lost 2 straight to the Bears. When you look at Avondale, how does you could tell that the game they played with New Boston here on week 1, that was a disaster, and then. They're trying to get their spirits back up. They got 2 good wins, of course. One of them was against Royal Oak, and then losing to Lathrop. What does this do for Avondale's playoff chances?
I mean, Avondale's another team that essentially they're going to have to step up their play significantly and essentially win out. Too inconsistent, as you can see. They seem like the various games this year, you're looking their stats and their totals are up and down every quarter, every half. They're not playing, they're not flowing. I think they did have a very good senior class that graduated last year with Holloman, who was
Josh Holloman,
3-time state champion in 100 meters. They lost some key guys. They lost a lot of speed, a lot of experience. So yeah, they're a team that, if they don't win out, it's going to be another 5-4, 4-5 season.
Yeah, but when you look at this Avondale team, I mean, like, this is a team that has a lot of a lot of talent coming back. They've, of course, with Travis James not being there, I think it's hurt them a little bit. But Tyler Gross has stepped in. I think he's done an okay job. But you got to look at this Avondale team, and like they just had like one bad quarter, I believe. It was they get 20 points to Lathrop. I mean, but you got to look at this team. I mean, like in the long haul, they don't have a lot of depth coming up. But what's your thoughts about having the issue there with them? What's going on with Avondale?
I think with Avondale, it's a smaller school. They're between 1,000 and 1,100 kids, so they don't have the enrollment as most of the teams in the OA. You look at the OA from smallest to biggest. You have teams like Avondale, Pontiac at the bottom. You have Clarkson, which is 2,700. They're top 5 in the state in enrollment. So they're not pulling the numbers. So they're not going to have the depth as say a Lake Orion, a Clarkson, some of the teams that are over 2,000 students. Troy High's down. Okay, but they've had a couple rough years, but their enrollment's there. They're just down for whatever reason is in football. Avondale, they have to produce that starting lineup of quality athletes to keep it going, and maybe it's just one of the years where they don't have the tier of athletes they've had in recent years.
Yeah, it's interesting there. Let's talk another team in the blue, Royal Oak. This is a team. Ray McMahon. They were 6-57 since 2008. Now they sit 2-2. They should be 3-1 after divine intervention against Avondale. What's your thoughts on the Ravens here? Of course, they're led by a good running back in Brendan Beer.
You got to think about Royal Oak. It was Kimball and Don Dare, which merged 9 years ago, and then you would think with the increased enrollment, school coming together. But you look back at the last 8 or 9 school years, and Royal Oak has overall struggled in a lot of sports for whatever reason. Even though the enrollment's over 2,000, they haven't produced a lot of winning seasons, a lot of league championships, or teams that are competing. And then on the football side, it's been a revolving door. It's been like a merry-go-round of head coaches, assistant coaches. There's been no
consistency.
No consistency. Yeah, no stability. It's not even flow. It's just different people coming in and changing. Some of these kids will go through 4 years and have 3 coaching staffs trying to direct them. So But maybe they finally have a group of kids that says, I'm tired of losing. We've had 6 wins since I was in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe they'll have enough down the stretch to get above 500. I'm sure that would be a huge success for them to finish 5-4.
Well, when you look at Royal Oak this year, I mean, like Ray McMahon talked about during media day. He said they wanted to change the culture there. But when you look at the games at Royal Oak, of course, week 1 they played a very tough opponent, Farmington, and then week 2, of course, nobody expected them to come out and upset Lathrop like they did. And then, of course, do you think that this Royal Oak team, do you trust them when they play a team like Groves or play a team like Berkeley, to at least compete and give them problems?
I don't know. I think Birmingham Groves is the class of the OA Blue. They have a lot of experience and a lot of speed, and they've been pretty consistent the last few years of producing winning teams. I wouldn't compare Royal Oak. I don't think Royal Oak can beat them. I think, but Royal Oak might be in that middle tier of teams in the OA Blue, considering what we were talking about, like Rochester, Adams, and Oak Park in the OA White. They're a team that they're sitting there. They're 2-2. What direction are they going to go? Are they going to step it up, try to get above 500, try to get that 6th win, or are they just going to bounce around mediocrity and and just be another average team? It'd be interesting to see what Royal Oak does. But yeah, changing the culture is not easy.
No.
Like I said, Troy's had a couple 4 or 5 down years.
Mm-hmm.
They're struggling. Athens looks like they've turned it around.
Well, you never know.
They've had years. Rochester High out of the OA White, they've had 2 winning seasons in 15 years.
Right.
It's not easy to change cultures like that. It can't be easy at Royal Oak, but you get a couple wins in there, especially early in the season, and that could do wonders for a team because it gives them confidence they haven't had before.
Well, when you look at Royal Oak, this is a team, of course, they've been just completely. They started off going in the red, of course, and then when they started getting bad, they're playing teams like Orion and Clarkson every year. Then they went to white, and that's been a nightmare. And then
maybe
the level of competition's been helping this program out this year. Maybe what's your thoughts about Royal Oak moving down from the white, from the being in the red for a few years to the white, and then now they're down in the blue?
It was a necessary move. They just couldn't compete. They couldn't compete with numbers. They were not just losing. They were getting killed by a lot of teams, and they were losing the teams that might have 1 or 2 wins and still lose, substantially by 3 or 4 touchdowns. So moving Royal Oak down, that had to happen. I think moving Pontiac down
had to happen.
Pontiac, the enrollment is just declining.
They have not scored a point this year.
They don't have the funding. You look at the facilities. You look at what Pontiac has versus something like a Lake Orion or Clarkston, and Oxford. It's an uneven playing field. They don't have the resources when. Coaches are going out every day and driving around the city of Pontiac and picking up their kids to make sure they get to and from practice because they have no other.
It's a difficult situation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So when you look at the situation there, of course, with Pontiac, it's a very difficult situation with them. It's very difficult, for them to compete. I think moving down the blue makes a lot of sense. After Pontiac was virtually being torched in the red the last few years. I mean, it was not easy. Let's go to the red, of course. Your thoughts on a couple games last week. West Bloomfield beating Troy Athens 28-17, of course. And then what's your thoughts about West Bloomfield this year?
I think West Bloomfield, not just this year, I think West Bloomfield has waited for this group for 25 years. I mean, the school has never been a power, so to speak, in football, especially since the OA started back in 1994. So we're like 21 years into the league now. They never had a group last year. They finally, they got to the playoffs.
Right.
They won a game. They were upset by Wall Lake Central in the district finals. Most of those key guys are back. This is that senior class. They've waited for a long time. West Bloomfield may be the most talented team of all 3 divisions of the OA.
They got a big one. They got a big one this week. But we'll talk about that next segment, okay? When the future games. Let's go to one of them. We recap Orion Oxford 36-0. Of course, the Dragons look like the team they were supposed to be after 2 heartbreaking losses to 2 very good teams. So, what's your thoughts on Lake Orion right now?
I like Lake Orion's speed. You could see Keith Fields, for example. He was a guy kind of waiting in the wings last year behind Matt Cross and some other guys. He has stepped into the limelight. He is very fast. Very shifty. When he gets to that hole, he accelerates pretty quick. When you have weapons like that, sometimes the opposing team, they can't coach that in practice.
Right.
You simply can't. Birmingham Groves has benefited the last couple of years. They have speed similar.
They have speed.
Avondale last few years with all these track kids,
yep.
they've been a state powerhouse in track the last 5 or 6 years. When you have that kind of speed, it's hard to simulate that in practice.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one thing Lake Orion has going for them. And with West Bloomfield on the docket, that's something that West Bloomfield also brings to the table is a lot of overall team speed. So that being said, that could be a very explosive matchup. Two teams that have similar thing. Now, West Bloomfield's a little more experienced, being that they got the playoffs last year.
Right.
But if you remember last year, Lake Orion, much like Troy Athens, was just decimated with injuries.
Right.
By the time you got 2/3 of the way through the season, you had multiple starters out for the year or missing multiple games. Sometimes it's hard to compete. Lake Orion appears to be healthy at the midpoint this year, and that could be a very interesting ball game. If West Bloomfield does win, I think they are going to win the OAA Red.
Yeah. We'll go over that next segment, okay? Let's talk about Oxford. You know what I mean? This is a team shut out 3 times, 1-3. They get Clarkson, and what is the problem with the Wildcats this year? What is their biggest problem this year? Even though they lost a lot, but they don't look right.
Well, you saw it twice. They couldn't capitalize within the 20-yard line. I'm not sure why late in the second quarter against Orion they didn't call timeout when they had the ball inside the 15 on 4th down, and they just ran a play and it didn't work. Crucial situations, if they could have scored on that play, it would have given them a little confidence going in the half, got them back in the game perhaps. It didn't happen, and they didn't really threaten at all in the second half.
No.
Now, they did graduate a really good senior class.
Right, Glacier Wallington
was a 4-time All-League quarterback.
Yep.
There were some other guys in there with 3 or 4 year starters. Very gifted class. Oxford apparently does lack speed. They don't seem to have the speed they've had the last few years.
They don't really have a true receiver the outside when you look at the problem that they have. When you look at Bud Riley, do you ever think, I know he likes pound the rock, but there's got to be times where you might want to change your offense up a little bit. And, especially go like a little bit more of a spread, especially looking at defenses better. Because a lot of defenses are adjusting to power football these days. But do you think it's time for Bud Riley to maybe change the offense up a little bit instead of going to the pound and rock scheme? Like, maybe bring up a little bit of the passing game. Because you got a passing quarterback in Brandon Lewis who can throw it.
Yeah, and I think if you look back Oxford over the years, some of the better teams were when they had a quarterback that could pass. But the key thing is, again, Oxford's dropping a lot of passes as well. They had a couple gimmies against Lake Orion. The receivers didn't come through. And then if you're not completing passes, if you're not having success, and then coaches have a tendency to start to shy away from the passing game if it's not working. But in today's era of football, I don't care if it's high school or pro or college, you need to be able to mix it up. You have to have the run and be able to pass. And Oxford's traditionally been a team that will run the football 75% of the time in most seasons. So in that aspect, I would agree with you. I think they need to find a way to start moving the ball through the air a little bit. I don't know if it's a case of trying to try different people. Maybe they're just in a rut. And, when you get shut out 3 times,
it's not easy.
The confidence is not there. It goes back to some of the other teams that have been struggling in recent years. You don't have the confidence when when you going into the season that people are saying, oh God, this team might not win more than a couple of games.
And the schedule's not friendly for the Wildcats because they got Clarkson this week. They still got to play West Bloomfield.
Right.
That's not going to be easy. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk more football with you, Mr. Stickrat. Okay, and stay tuned, viewers, on OAA Now. Hello, Lake Orion. It's Anthony Taramina, co-host of Between Taraminas. I want to let you know of a new show called History Now. In it, we're going to talk about global, national, and political events that occur in our lifetime. We're going to also have guests and also have co-hosts as well, and also plenty of surprises. Catch us on History Now here on ONTV. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina. Of course, I got Dan Stick right here with me. we got Double O Trophy here, of course, with us. Of course, that was given by Lake Orion. Of course, their 36-0 win over Oxford on Friday night at Orion. We got more teams to mention here to talk about. We got there's been this one team I'm curious to see about, and it's the Troy Athens Redhawks. You know, this is a team that struggled in recent years. Josh Hepner finally looks like has addressed a big problem, which is his defense. And you know, what's going on with the Redhawks? Even though they sit 2-2 right now, you know what I mean. This has been a team that has been eyeballing some people.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's a case where they do have a good senior class. That, for one, is going to help.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they did have higher expectations. They were decimated by injuries, similar to Lake Orion, as I mentioned earlier. When you have so many guys out of the lineup, especially at key positions, it can get ugly quick, especially if you don't have the depth. So I think Athens is a quality team. I think they're a team that could squeak in the playoffs this year. They have a good senior class, a good junior quarterback who's starting to play well. Even in their losses, they're not getting blown out of the water. If you look back in the last 10 or 15 years, sometimes they've had losses where they'll lose 63-28. They're not doing that this year. They lost to West Bloomfield by 11.
They lost L'Anse Creuse North by 2.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a swing game. I think that, you know, a couple plays away, they could have won that.
Right.
So, yeah, I think Athens is a quality team. Are they going to get in the playoffs? You look at the rest of their schedule, they have a shot.
They don't. I mean, they got that big one next week when they go to Clarkston. I mean, like, let's look at the Wolves. You know what I mean? They got injuries that decimated this team, but they're gonna get some key players back. Nolan Erickson's expected to come back, I think, this week. They play Stony Creek. They've emerged with the quarterback and Alex Kessman. Of course, he was their punter and kicker. He had a good game against Stony Creek. What's your thoughts on the Wolves right now, especially because they're starting to get a little bit healthier and a little bit dangerous heading into the final stretch of the season?
I think Clarkson's good. You know, they have not had a losing season since 2002. They got to the semis in 99 and 2000. They had 2 rough years in 01 and 02, where they were 2-7 those years, I believe. And, you know, they've been consistently good over the years. And then they won 27 straight, won the back-to-back state championships in Division I.
Right, and then they lost to Macomb Dakota.
Exactly. So you have a lot of guys that were waiting in the wings. Some of these guys were starters, some were backups. But the program is used to winning. Even on the junior varsity freshman level, they rarely have losing seasons there. So these kids are accustomed to winning. Their coaching staff is very stable. Kurt Richardson has a lot of the same guys coming back year after year. So the program is set. They have expectations. Everyone knows their part. And I think they have a case where it was just a dose of bad luck. Were they going to beat Macomb Dakota in week 1? Probably not. Clarkston had mostly new starters this year. Dakota is now the largest school in Michigan, over 2,900 kids. They had a huge junior class last year. Dakota is without doubt one of the probably top 5 teams in Division I. I think Clarkston's getting better. I think if they start getting more and more of these guys back who are hurt, they could become a dangerous team.
I can see Clarkson and Orion probably in the same sentence right now. You know, both teams are getting better each week. But the emergence of Brennan Fogel, of course, when you look at what he's done, you know, replacing a guy in Nolan Erickson who was a Mr. Football candidate. What do you think about Fogel's performance?
Steady. I think he stepped up. They needed someone to step in and, you know, they didn't know how long Erickson was going to be out for. And that goes to depth. When you have 2,700 kids like Clarkston, their teams are 70, 80 kids. There's just a lot of quality guys waiting in the wings. You know, a couple years ago, Ian Erickson came in, and he, as a sophomore, he was down on the depth chart a little bit.
Right.
Comes in as a junior. The opportunity was him to step up amongst 3 or 4 running backs. The first game, he explodes. And they knew right after that, by the end of that game, that he was going to be their go-to guy for 2 years. And then when Erickson does come back, Fogel is the type of guy that gives them multi-dimensions.
Well, when you look at the carries, you know what I mean, because you think it could be a timeshare between Erickson and Kugel. I mean, I think it could be a timeshare. I mean, when you look at what's going on with them, with Clarkston, I mean, like, and of course you had the emergence of Alex Kessman. You know what I mean? They don't really trust their freshman quarterback. I was surprised that Kessman did play in that game against West Bloomfield. He had to replace Anthony Ryder, who got hurt. But why not go why go with the experienced senior quarterback? Then you have like a couple freshmen down the wings who are getting a lot of hype down there, like in Stratton Harris and Jacob Wagner.
Sometimes you want to go with someone that's older. I mean, Kesserman's obviously one of the best kickers in the state. 53-yard field goal, I believe, last week against Rochester Stony Creek. And he stepped in, at that age, he seemed like he was comfortable. He stepped in, he knew it was his time to shine. He directed a team that scored 45 points. There's a big difference. It's not easy for a freshman, especially in boys sports, to step in sometimes and be the go-to guy. Do you see it? Yes, it happens on occasion. We saw it with Glacier Wallington and Oxford.
And John Schroeder,
exactly. Wallington 4 years ago, their quarterback went down week 3. In the second quarter, he steps in, gets the team to the playoffs. Was an all-league quarterback all 4 years. That stuff can happen. Maybe the coaching staff just saw something in practice. They see these kids all year round. Maybe they just felt Kesserman was ready being a senior, and they gave him a shot, and it looks like he'll be the starter from here out.
When you look at Clarkston, their defense has gotten better, of course, especially when you bring in a guy like Carter Litton, who he didn't have in that West Bloomfield game. Of course, he was out, I believe, with mono, but he came back. When you look at Clarkston's defense and you look at their lines are not the same, in years past, but they found a way to get it gelled.
Clarkson was blessed, let's put it that way. The last 4 or 5 years, their line was enormous. Few high school teams can go back around the state and say they had the size and the mobility on their offense and defensive line like Clarkson's had the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Seems like they've stepped back a little bit to reality. The size is average. Coaching staff knew that. They didn't hide it. They knew this was coming. But again, when you have a system like Clarkston, people know how to. It's not like they have like a Royal Oak where there's a new coaching staff every
4 years.
These kids, they grow up. It's the same people. They know what to expect them. They know the plans, the schemes. In the long run, some of these guys, it's their time to shine. Their time to step in. They know exactly what they're doing, and I guess that's what makes a good program is you're rarely going to have that bleep on the radar of the losing season. It's just new guys every year, every other year stepping in and keeping the consistency, keeping the program going. And I think with Clarkston, they do have the personnel. They don't have the size, but they do have the personnel to keep that going. I wouldn't be surprised if Clarkston gets back to playoffs this year.
Do you see both Lake Orion and Clarkston being playoff teams?
That depends because one of them could be 5-4. There's so many variables. You look at the last 4 weeks of season or 5 weeks of season. It's hard to say. They both could. Athens could. I mean, there's 4 teams in the OAA Red that look like they're it's kind of divided.
Right.
West Bloomfield has obviously been the cream of the crop so far.
Right.
Clarkson, Orion, Athens are all quality teams.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays off and how many of these teams get into the playoffs.
Got one more team to mention. We got the Stony Creek Cougars. Of course, this has been a team that last week was just blown up by Clarkson. Then they had a heartbreaking loss. They had a terrible loss to Oxford week 2, and then week 1 they ended up losing a heartbreaker to Adams. When you look at the Cougars, what has been the problem for Brad Zuby's team as of late?
I just think it's overall experience. I don't think they have, and I also don't think they have the quality athletes they had a couple years ago. It's sometimes you have it, and sometimes you don't. I don't think it's anything with coaching. I think Zube's come in and reestablished Stony Creek as at least being competitive. It just may be one of those years where they don't have the athletes matching up with the other teams on their schedule.
When you look at Stony Creek, they had a bad loss to Oxford, of course, losing 21-19. And that so far that loss is absolutely killing them right now. When you look at the Cougars' schedule, they got to play at West Bloomfield and at Orion. Those are going to be 2 tough games, and they got Troy this week. But Troy, this was a team. This was a team, Stony Creek, a couple of years ago. They had playoff inspirations last year until Lake Orion beat them. But when you look at the Cougars, do you think that pipeline that they have right now? Do you see any improvement in the future for Stony?
I do, and one of the things is, and not everyone realizes this, in Rochester they've kind of turned off the valves with the open enrollment within the district, so they've redivided the borders, and starting with this year's freshman class, students were, put geography. It wasn't like open enrollment where, kids in various sports were going to various schools. That's going to even more than even the playing field in Rochester in the next few years, and we won't see that now. but a couple years down the road, we could see, even out some. So in that retrospect, I think Stony Creek will be fine. It just may be one of those years where they're down. You mentioned, they play Troy this week. Troy's had a few down years.
Right.
Their coaches are talking about things are going to get better, just better kids in lower grades. It could turn around. I think Troy's problem right now, and you saw it at the Lake Orion game, is they're struggling on the lines.
Right.
They have a hard time moving the football.
Right.
And that's their main area of concern is they've got to improve the line play, especially the offensive line play. If they plan on getting any wins down the stretch here, something to build on for the future is a team like that. Same thing with Stony. They could use another win, but you're looking at the schedule, and it's going to be difficult. I think they can beat Rochester down late in the season. In the crossover, that's a game that's already been set. The Rochester schools try to all play each other. That's something the OAA has worked out. And Rochester is a team that, unfortunately, they had a very small class. They were decimated injuries in week 1 and week 2. They have another team that has some good young kids in the program. They're at least a year away yet. And so on down the line. But Stony Creek, it just may be one of those cases where it's just a down year. Will they get better? Will they win some games down the stretch as possible? I think they'll be a better team next year.
We'll go over some possible realignment, of course, possibilities, because this is a realignment year next year. What do you see in the realignment process? You know what I mean? Do you see in the next few years, do you see like all the Rochester schools coming together? We don't know the situation with Harrison yet. I mean, do you possibly see even possible expansion with the OAA this heading into next year?
That's hard. That's hard to say. You're going to drop another school. So if you lose Southfield Lathrop, that's dropping down to 23.
Right, 23, and then Harrison will be 22.
We don't know what's going to happen to Farmington Harrison next couple of years. Obviously, we'll learn back in July that that's being seriously discussed about closing some schools in the district, including Harrison. But then you look at all the teams as a whole, and sometimes you got to realize that there are certain programs that are struggling. You take a program like Rochester, for instance. Even though their enrollment's close to 1,800,
they're struggling.
They've been struggling. They had winning seasons in 2010 and 2011. They had to go back to 1999 before that, another losing season. They were 1-8 last year. Struggling as a whole. Would you consider moving them down to the blue for a year or two?
Right.
It's obviously helping Royal Oak kind of rebuild a little bit. But then when you do move someone down there, if you're losing Lathrop, do you move someone up, or you just have Rochester slide down to play? Troy's another program that's been struggling.
They've been suffering.
But over 2,000 kids, are they going to justify a school that big being down in the OAA Blue? Now with Royal Oak, they might consider it because Royal Oak again has struggled since Kimball and Don Dare merged 9 years ago.
Yes.
6 wins in 9 years.
Do you think enrollment divisions? You think because there's been a lot of with the enrollment divisions. Do you think this format would work next year, especially with the uncertainty? The enrollment divisions, of course, you base it on enrollment, but you look at the MAC. You know what I mean? You look at the Macomb Area Conference. They got a couple teams in St. Clair County. They got a couple teams in Wayne County. So you look at, I would think possibly expansion would be possible. You know what I mean? Even though the OAA wants to be in Oakland County, but do you see possibility expansion coming next year? Next few years for the OAA?
And do I think it's a good idea? Yes, I do. Will it happen? I don't think it will. Because you look back in the last 10 years, you saw Clawson and Lamphere and Madison out of Madison Heights. They went back to the MAC conference.
Right.
You've seen Ortonville, Brandon. They went north.
They went north to Metro
League
with Holly.
Now they're up with Holly. And then you have to look geographically. It is so difficult, especially in the afternoon hours, for teams to drive from Farmington and Southfield all the way across up to the northern part of the Oakland County.
Right.
And I think that was one of the many reasons why some schools have left. It was hard when you had that many people in Oakland County. The traffic problems. It's a lot easier for Orton or Brandon to get on the road and go over to Holly and Linden and Fenton than it is than to drive.
But do you see maybe a possibility of some of those teams coming back, like a Clawson or a Brandon?
And that was kind of strange because like Clawson and Lamphere and Madison, back when they had 4 divisions in the OAA and just about every sport, those 3 schools had a tendency to do well in a lot of sports.
Right.
And then they went over to the MAC and they're playing against other Class B schools. I don't think they're coming back. I have not heard any talk, any consideration. When you're looking at 600-700 kids, and then the next biggest schools like in Avondale at 1,000, Pontiac's
Right.
like 1,200. There's that 400 or 500 student gap. I don't see them coming back. Brandon seems to be very happy in the Flint Metro League. They are just a few miles outside of Genesee County. I don't see them coming back. The OAA now, it's been around long enough. It's over 2 years, 2 decades old. You know, there was talks back in the '90s that Country Day was trying to fund a conference.
Right.
The OAA, the superintendents and the principals, ADs, said we're not allowing any parochial schools in this conference. It's never happened. I don't see that ever happening with the current administrators today. I know there was talk about
Grand
Blank would have, yes, exactly. And Grand Blank would have been a good fit
Oh, yes.
for the OAA Red in a lot of sports because in non-league games, the Grand Blank is traditionally played.
Right.
Troy and Rochester,
Right.
Clarkson Lake, we're in a lot of sports. Like for soccer, they'll always schedule non-league games. It's very common.
But then that comes to my next question. Lapeer. You look at Lapeer. They were forced when they had to merge when they had to merge and become the Lapeer Lightning with Lapeer East, Lapeer West merging. They ended up finding the Saginaw Valley Conference, which instead of having to see a team like Lapeer having to play teams in Genesee County, they still play teams in Genesee County, but you see them going up to Midland, Mount Pleasant. I mean, like those type of teams. Then it's affecting their travel. Do you think possibly the OA can make an exception maybe and have Lapeer join the conference? Because Lapeer right now, they're basically getting hammered with travel.
Yes. Geographically and mileage, that would make more sense. Once I heard that the two Lapeer schools were merging, I thought they would be a decent fit. They're not that far out of Oakland County.
No.
That's a 20-minute bus ride to Oxford.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's not that far from Orion, but maybe some of the other schools. I'm saying maybe bring back Clawson would definitely help the small schools like Ferndale, Hazel Park. I think would make a lot of sense. I mean, like, I did a couple weeks ago on my blog. I said there will be a possibility of 4 schools coming to the league. I would love to see the OA back at 26. I would definitely love to see, I would love to definitely see Brandon come in. I'd like to see Holly come in. I've heard a lot of rumblings of the Metro. And then I would love to see Lapeer come in, and I'd love to see Clawson come in, because I think those teams would make perfect sense, and also it would definitely help the landscape of the OA. What's your thoughts?
I was always sad to see some of those schools leave the OA. I kind of liked it when there was 4 divisions. It was a very good, diverse league. Schools leave for various reasons. Travel, they can't compete. They see sometimes the grass being greener on the other side. Working with a lot of these schools, I haven't heard any serious rumblings about anyone switching conferences. Would I like to see the OA bigger? Absolutely. Would I like to see a team like Lapeer come down in and then kind of break that mold and bring someone in? Because yes, a lot of these conferences like the MAC, they do have a couple Oakland County schools, a couple of schools up at the Port Huron area in St. Clair County. They're coming down to the MAC. It's not that far. So that being said, I would like to see some of those teams in here. Are they going to come? I don't see it happening in the next few years. But yeah, the OA has been relatively shrinking.
Right. With mergers and
mergers,
I think you got to look at it. They have to look at it. The league's definitely got to look at it. But when you look at the, I think it make a lot of sense if a team like that would come in, like a Lapeer, because it would create a whole new dynamic. You know what I mean? Especially in different type of sports. So I think it would make a lot of sense with that. And then, of course, it's been a topic. It's been a very touchy topic. It's been that. And, the enrollment division next year, of course, the merging of Southfield. Where do you see Southfield at next year? Do you see them in the red, or do you see them back still in the white?
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing because Lathrop does have about, well over 1,000 students. That's going to put Southfield way above 2,000. They're going to be one of the bigger schools in the OA, no question. So yeah, they could be a possibility where they do slide up into the white.
In the red.
Or excuse me, out of the white into the red. That's one of the things I'm sure the OA, that they'll look at once they start looking at realignment in various sports.
What about the time? The time could be an issue if they're in the red, because you're going to be dealing with Lake Orion, Clarkson, Oxford, all having to come down to Southfield in that 5:30 start time. Do you think it would be best for Southfield to stay in the white where they have the rivals there, and instead of like having to go up in the red and having to deal with with those northern teams, and the travel?
Not necessarily. It's not that much difference for Southfield to go up to Rochester, than it is to go up to Lake Orion. You're looking at minimal miles. I mean, Adams and Lake Orion, proximity-wise.
Well, the 5:30 start time.
Well, 5:30 start is what it is. I mean, they do that for their reasons. That might affect crowds a little bit. If Southfield's hosting a Clarkson at 5 or 5:30 in basketball or football, they may not have the crowds they would have at a 7 o'clock game, but they have the reasons for doing that. I don't think that's going to be a factor about how or if they realign divisions.
I think it will, but that's my opinion.
Southfield is going to be a large school next year. I don't know if it's just going to be called Southfield High, if they're going to give a new name or not. Well, that remains to be seen. But
the nickname will be an interesting topic. So that'll be very interesting. I mean, kind of surprised with Blue Bay Hills when they merged and they went with a different color scheme. They went with them purple and black. Very similar to Pontiac.
Exactly.
Okay, now we come back. We're going to preview Week 5 games. Of course, some top-notch games coming up here on OAA Now. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Terramina. We got Dan Stickrat here of North Oakland Sports and State Champs Inside. So, you got one more topic here on you? Got one more?
Absolutely.
Okay, we got Week 5 games coming up, of course. We mentioned some of them early in the week. I mean, a lot of big ones. Let's go with the big one from the OA White, which is Southfield and Harrison, of course. There's a lot of interesting storylines in this game. Brendan Brown and Tyron Light, they played for Harrison last year, and now they're at Southfield. I mean, going up against their former mates at Farmington Hills Harrison. So, what's your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, very interesting game. I think the winner of this game could end up winning the OA White. Two teams that have a lot of experience and a lot of size, and then there's always the speed factor. It's hard to pick against John Harrington, though. I think the guy is an amazing coach. He always seems to find a way. And they have the incentive when you lose 2 players, there's going to be a little bit of vendetta. Some of these people are going to, they left us, we want to show them that they made a mistake attitude. But you never know. I mean, I think it will be a good football game. I assume this is going to be a type of game that there's a lot of points up on the scoreboard. And again, it could have title implications for the OA. And you look at the big picture. Beyond that, maybe this could help a team end up hosting a first-round playoff game. So yeah, I think this is one of the biggest games in Oakland County this year. This week, no question. There's a lot on the line. But at the end of the day, I will pick Harrison.
I look at this game here, Southfield, a lot of youth on this team. They got a lot of experience. When you look at Harrison, of course, I'm a little worried about their injury factor there, about the lack of depth. And, of course, you have Kylie Kareem playing 2 ways right now. When you look at this game on paper, I like Southfield in this game because of the experience they have. I like Samuel Johnson III as a good quarterback. I just think the lack of depth is going to hurt Harrison in this game. But I do like Southfield in this game because of, I think, when you look at this game, the road teams won and more in this series than the home team. So I kind of got to go with the Blue Jays in this one, in this game. Another game we're going to mention is Oak Park and Adams. Of course, Oak Park desperate, sitting at 1-3. Adams 2-2. I mean, what's your thoughts? This is Adams' homecoming this week.
Yeah, these are 2 teams I think that have played below the bar, so to speak. They have underachieved so far at the midpoint season. I thought both teams would have more wins. And yeah, the winner of this game is going to have more likely remain in the playoff hunt. I think the loser is going to be in trouble. If Oak Park loses again, they're going to be in serious trouble trying to get in on playoff points.
Right.
I think Adams has more experience overall. They have a lot more guys coming back. They have a large junior class. Remember, they did have 7 sophomores on roster last year that played key factors. Cowwood is a solid quarterback. But last week, giving up 2 late touchdowns and losing to Farmington High, where's their confidence level going to be back? Are they going to be dwelling on the past or going to be moving forward? Because if they win this game, I think they can join a few others as a teams that can likely get to the playoffs. If they lose, they're 2-3, as well as Oak Park.
Still play Harrison.
Both those teams are going to be against the back of the wall, having to win out.
Oak Park's already there.
Yeah, they're already facing that. Oak Park graduated quite a few guys. Adams brought a lot back. I think that's going to be the difference. Adams is homecoming, a lot more experience, and they do have a quality quarterback. I'll go with Adams in this game.
Even over Chauncey Lohman? Are you kidding me? You got Dylan Stackhouse. I like him a lot. He's played really well, even though Oak Park's played a nightmarish of a schedule. Of course, playing Zeeland West is never easy, and then you got to play. They still got to play South in the schedule. We don't know where Adams' confidence is at. We really don't. And losing 19-15 the way they did, hurt Tony Petrino did not sleep well in that game after that game. You know what? It is homecoming. Adams got to worry about that hype. I'm taking the upset. I'm taking Oak Park. I like the Knights here in this game because I like the way that Stackhouse has been playing. If Chauncey Lohman comes back, healthy, and I expect him to play in this game. I think he's going to have a huge game. Of course, I like Miles Daniel in this one a lot too. I just think that offensively, this is going to be a very close game. But I just think Oak Park, having to playing a team like Zeeland West has really helped them prepare for this game. And I like the Knights to pull off the upset because we don't know if Adams goes 2-3, we don't know where their mindset is. They could still be eliminated. That loss of Farmington has really hurt them in the worst way possible. So Oak Park's still playing desperate. I like what Carter's doing over there. I think Oak Park pulls out the upset. Next game we're going to mention is in the blue, Avondale and Berkeley. You look at this game. Avondale's lost to Berkeley last 2 years. Their confidence should be shot after losing last week to Lathrop. Berkeley is a team that's been rolling ever since losing to Holly week 1. Of course, dealing with Dave Tooley's defense there. Holly's not been doing bad lately. Even though they're sit 2-2 because of their offense. But what's your thoughts about this game between the Yellow Jackets and the Bears at Hurley?
Yeah, this is a toss-up game. Again, Avondale is kind of underachieved. Berkeley has kind of got things going after the season opening loss to Holly. Holly is more than likely the most improved team in Oakland County. I know they're outside the OAA. They were 0-9 last year, but they were a competitive 0-9. They lost a lot of games in the fourth quarter. And Holly brought some coaches over from different schools that have helped right the ship there. So when you look at the Avondale-Berkeley game, that is a key matchup. I think the winner is going to stay in the playoff hunt. The loser is going to fall out of that discussion. It's a coin toss. I do like Berkeley's defense. I think they are very strong in linebacker. Avondale does have some quality players. They're just, for whatever reason, they don't seem to be gelling right now. So that's a toss-up. I believe I picked Avondale, but it's one of those games where it might go down to turnovers. That's a toss-up game, but there's a lot riding on this game. Neither team is likely going to win the OA Blue, but the winner here is going to stay in the playoff picture. I think the loser might fall out.
Well, when you look at this game, when you look at Berkeley's won the last 2 weeks with Avondale by combined 4 points, and you look at the Bears. Of course, Chris Sequoia has done a really nice job with that team. You got Nolan Given, you got Ashton Wood, the quarterback-receiver combination. You look at the difference in this game can Avondale play like they did for 3 quarters against Lathrop and basically just keep clawing and battling? It's going to be a tough assignment for Steve Deutsch going to Hurley Field. In this game, I like Berkeley because they're at home. They have like you said, they got a big line up front. They got a very unique situation there. End of the day, I just think that Berkeley's going to find a way and knock off Avondale. the way they. I mean, once again, I think they're going to beat them third time in a row.
Right, and then opposite end, I'm sure Avondale's preaching all week long, reminding, hey, we lost these 2 games the last couple of years. That cost them a playoff berth last year, 2-point loss, I believe, to Berkeley. They're not going to forget that. I think this will be a close game. It might boil down to 1 or 2 plays, a turnover here, a turnover there. That's a very pivotal game. Can either of those teams beat Birmingham Groves? Likely not. You never know what can happen, but this is a game, I think, in a way, it could be a must-win for both teams. So I think this could be one of the better games of the OA slate.
Speaking of odds with Groves, do you think Groves has a chance? What are your chances of Groves going undefeated this year?
That's possible. And you look at the possible playoff picture, too. You don't know where they're going to stick Groves. I think Groves is going to, won't have a problem getting 6 wins. Brother Rice is struggling. They may not make the playoffs this year. Unfortunately, schools in that area, if you look back traditionally, Groves, a Seaholm, a Southfield, a lot of times these schools have had quality teams, but they draw Rice early in the playoffs. They don't have a team. They don't get a chance of enjoying a long run. If Rice is not a playoff team this year, a team like Groves with their speed, and they have a lot of guys back from the last couple of years, that could be a dangerous team come the playoffs. But the strength of schedule, the OA Blue overall, it's an average. It's decent, but it's not a phenomenal league. It's not overall comparatively like the red or the white of the OA.
When you look at Groves' Week 9 game, they play Waterford Kettering, which is going to be a triple option team. They've shocked some people. They beat Walled Lake Central last week. Yes. And what's your thoughts on that game between Groves and Waterford Kettering?
Yeah, that would be interesting because Waterford Kettering is another team that does have some speed.
And they run a triple option.
Yeah, they run a triple option. They do have a lot of offensive weapons. That could be a very intriguing matchup. I think it's been nice to see what's going on at Waterford Mount and Kettering the last few years overall, not just football, a lot of sports. You've seen a little bit of resurgence. They seem to be a lot more competitive with boys sports than they have been.
Right.
So yeah, a different coaching staff has kind of helped Kettering step it up a notch. So yeah, they could be Groves' biggest threat between them going undefeated or not. That would be. We'll discuss that another time. But that is a very interesting non-league game at the end of the season, and that could obviously not just have implications on Groves going undefeated or not, but would they be able to host the playoff game if they lose to Kettering?
Got 2 more games to mention here. Before we sign off, we got an interesting one. Speaking of it, Todd Schultz, the coach at Stony Creek, they play Troy this week. Do you like Stony Creek over Troy?
Yeah, I do. I just when I personally saw Troy earlier this year against Lake Orion, they just struggled to move the football. They just seemed to not be able to create any space. I'm not saying they don't have any skilled athletes, but at any level of football, if you do not have an offensive line, you're going to struggle with football. I think we saw that Sunday with the Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings.
They can't.
Just found holes in in their in the Lions OL the whole second half. Similar situation. I think that's Troy's enigma. I think that's their main problem right now is the offensive line. But both teams have struggled to score overall. I don't think, and maybe that would be the game where one of those 2 teams can actually gain some confidence by scoring some points. So
I like Stony Creek in that game, handily in that one. Last game we're going to talk about is the big one in the red, Lake Orion, West Bloomfield in the Swamp Friday night. What's your thoughts on that game?
I love the team speed on both sides. I love the experience of West Bloomfield. Like I said earlier in the show, that school has waited a long time for a class to come through like this. For many, many years, they were mediocre at best. They were the type of team that you would schedule in your homecoming because they struggled.
Right, they struggled.
Not every year, but West Bloomfield has struggled with consistency. If you look back the last 20, 25 years, you can see the pattern. On paper, West Bloomfield's probably the best team overall in the OAA. The one thing Lake Orion does have going for them is they do have a very solid offensive line, and because of that, they do have the team speed to match up with West Bloomfield.
But when you look at it, if it comes down to a line matchup, if it comes down to a power matchup, who do you favor in that? Do you favor Orion or West Bloomfield if it's a power matchup?
If it's just strictly power, probably West Bloomfield, being that they're a senior-heavy team.
Even over Lake Orion's offensive line?
Again, Lake Orion's offensive line has played well. They would have to play their best game of the season. I think this is a game that's you're gonna see a lot of points in the scoreboard. Both teams do have explosiveness. But Chris Bell has proven in close to two decades at Lake Orion. Last year was a rare losing season, and a lot of that had to do with I think they were just decimated by injuries.
And last year, of course, was 39-0. You know that's going to be motivating the Dragons.
Absolutely. Lake Orion had a lot of guys out for that game last year. They seem to be healthy. And this could be a game where we're going to see their sophomore quarterback, Prieskorn.
Kane Prieskorn.
This might be a game where he might have to come to age. They haven't relied on the pass too much.
No, but you might have to.
They might have to.
But you got Mosley and you got Foster back there. And West Bloomfield, the team that likes to run a read option. Of course,
Right.
Tristan Jackson, of course, he can also catch the ball too. So, when I look at this game, when I look at it here, I watched West Bloomfield play on numerous occasions. I watched the 39-0 game last year. That was a shocker. But when you look at West Bloomfield, this has been a team that has some trouble with discipline and penalties. And Lake Orion's been a team that can frustrate teams at times by creating those undisciplined and penalties. So this game is going to come down the wire. When you look at this game, I think the key in this game is can Lake Orion run the ball against West Bloomfield. I think they will run it against West Bloomfield despite the fact they have two very good players in Theo Majette and Jordan Suswension at linebacker. And I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't think neither defense is going to stop the other.
Yeah, I agree. I think this will be a high offensive, high-octane type game. I think there will be a lot of points up on the scoreboard. I think
similar to Chippewa Valley.
If Lake Orion can pull the upset, it will make the OAA Red very interesting. I think looking at the schedule, West Bloomfield beat Clarkson earlier in the season. Clarkson had a lot of guys out. So you look down the stretch, West Bloomfield already beat Troy Athens. Right. I don't see anyone else in the OA Red competing with West Bloomfield. I think if West Bloomfield does win this game, they will win the OA Red. They are the most experienced team in the league. Right. Can Lake Orion beat West Bloomfield? By the way, they played the last couple weeks. I would say yes. But Lake Orion's wins were also against Troy and Oxford, two teams that are.
Let's not forget Lake Orion's played Chippewa Valley, an offense very similar to West Bloomfield. So
they have seen something similar. So
yes.
This is a team that can beat them. Is it likely? It's hard to say. West Bloomfield's a very experienced team, but this is the last team in the OA Red that has a shot to beat West Bloomfield.
I think Lake Orion can go and pull off the upset. I really do, because here's why. Because you're going to have Jalen Wiggins. I think the key to this game, I think, is going to be Brody Kreitzer. Brody Kreitzer, has proven at times he's shown he can make the big play, but he hasn't shown it consistently. I think he's going to be a huge impact in this game because that Jalen Wiggins' top option is going to be covered. But then you have a guy in Brody Kreitzer. I think it's going to be a huge factor because they're going to be focused on stopping Keith Fields. So I think in this game, I like Orion in this game to pull off the major upset. It would be a monster upset within the state because of the experience. Because of the discipline that West Bloomfield has, the undisciplined that they have, and also I just think that when you look at this game, they're ticked off, they're motivated, and they're hungry to pull it off. They want West Bloomfield. They want them bad. To have in the swamp, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and Lake Orion's never lost to West Bloomfield consecutive years, so it's going to be very interesting. 39-0, I don't see a blowout. Like I said, both teams I think will score the point. I think it's going to boil down to who can stop the big play more than the other. When you have two teams that can put up a lot of points on the board, they have a lot of speed, explosiveness. It'll be the key of making one huge stop. This could be a very close game.
I think it will be.
It is a toss-up. I would go with West Bloomfield on paper strictly because of experience. They're the most experienced team in the OA. But if there's one team that's going to find a way to beat West Bloomfield on the remaining schedule, it will be Lake Orion in Week 5.
So we'll see what happens coming up. Dan, I'd like to thank you for coming on for the podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
Yep, I thank the Double O for making an appearance again.
Do I rub this for good luck?
Yeah, I got to rub for good luck, yes. All right, everybody, I'm going to sign on out here. Good night, everybody, and God bless. Good luck to everybody in the OA competing this week. Good night, everybody.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.